Go ahead.
I'm not so sure that all secret money is equal. And I know that in some of those, if people have to identify that they've given to a certain thing, then they have protesters showing up on their lawns. And so what would you do to counter that part of it? If they have to identify that they've given to a certain cause, like out in California, against the propaganda, I think it was, marriage amendment, then people came in there and, you know, they just got blasted all over.
That's a really good question. I mean, I don't know what to, I mean, that's a tricky one, right? Because it's like, if it's a matter of physical safety, I don't know. I mean, most spending, thankfully, still is transparent, right? Every donation you give to a political campaign, any donation you gave directly to Prop 8 is disclosed currently. The problem is there's this increase of secret money. I think we've had, ever since the early 70s, a pretty relatively strong system of disclosure, and people have not been, I think, increasingly harassed. I mean, I think this has been something that has sort of, I'm not sure that it's a problem that's rising right now. It may be a flatline, but I don't think just because there's an increase in secret money starting to happen that you could justify allowing it for that reason, because money's been reported to the FEC and to state elections agencies now for 40 years.
I guess it depends on how far you take it, because there may be people who wouldn't want to donate to the Tea Party because they may take abuse from the left. Even though if they're not Tea Party people, they might donate because they believe in the cause, but they don't want to be identified as Tea Party.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I think if physical safety was an issue, that's something to debate. But I haven't heard a lot of cases where it truly gets to that point of real physical safety. Maybe a little discomforting, but yeah.
It seems like nowadays it's been taken with the cuteness of videos and double speak. A Muslim will not say anything bad about his religion because he can't, so somebody else sees that and say, I can't say nothing bad about the Tea Party because if I do, somebody will say, well, then it's all bad. Are you going to get people saying that they can't believe none of this because it's all double speak?
I don't know.
I mean, double speak seems to be taking over everything. Politicians.
Yeah, I mean, I just think you got to get to a point where the politicians genuinely feel like they're going to throw in office if they don't act on this issue. But because what we got right now, it's a joke. I mean, I lobbied for 10 years for, you guys heard of net neutrality?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been lobbying for 10 years for net neutrality against cable and phone companies, and they just won every debate. They owned it. They owned town. Everybody was overt about it. Literally, I had the chairman of the Federal Communications saying, these guys own the town. They own the Congress. There's nothing I can do. We go there, and then the gentleman in plaid.
You know, this kind of scares me. This isn't the problem. The problem is everybody in the government controls too much. It's not the money that's the problem. It's how much control the government has over everything. They decide everything. And I worry that unions, they're out there lobbying, especially the ones that work for the government, like SEIU.
Yeah.
They lobby to get more money from the government.
Yeah.
Okay? And they spend their money, and the unions spend their money left and right. And before, the other side had no ability to keep up with it. Okay? If you were a business and you had a reason to lobby your government, you couldn't spend the money, but the unions could lobby against you. And I think that a lot of these problems are caused because the government tries to control too much. They control everything.
I would really like to address that because I have a very different perspective. The money is the problem with every single question. You sit here and you ask the question, what's the root of the problem with Common Core? Trace the money back. Where does it go back to? It goes back to Bill Gates, it goes back to Jeb Bush, it goes back to all that. It's about lining their pockets and making more money on the backs of our children.
But because we let the government control our life.
But the money
Schools should be
is
controlled in the
starting.
state
It's
and
kinda like-
locally.
It's kind of like
They
the
should
chicken
not be in
and the
Washington,
egg.
D.C.
Chicken and egg.
It's the
That's
chicken
what
and the
Catherine's
egg.
See, so I think you're right, but I think you might have the egg behind the chicken or vice versa. So, for example,
You can take all the money out of this you want to take out of it, and you're still gonna get people telling you how to live your life.
right, but here's where you're wrong. Currently, labor unions have too much power because they have money. And corporations have too much power because they have money. They both do. And we are in this false dichotomy. It doesn't matter. They're both bad. Their influence is bad. We can't get education reform, and we can't fix like teachers' unions
We get
because
reform
because
from
the
education
teachers
all the time.
because the teachers' union is the #1 spending union in the country. And that's one of the biggest reasons why our schools are broken and budgets are bloated. Tax code. I saw that RV out. Whose RV is that? Okay, tax code. You can't fix the tax code because you've got pigs at the trough on every major tax break in the 6,000-page tax code because of money, because each one of those interests is lining the pockets of the politicians who rewrite the tax code and are in charge of it, but they won't make government smaller, they won't make the tax code more short and efficient because it's just pigs at the trough and each politician is bought.
I have two questions. Who funds represent.us?
Mostly Silicon Valley tech entrepreneurs and small donors, but our big money comes from like the Hewlett Foundation and guys who made a bunch of money in the gaming industry, some executives from Google and Facebook. But these are people who are not particularly political. They're not lefties and they're not righties. They tend to be kind of libertarian independents, but they understand. They're engineers by training, and they understand that there's a system failure, and so they're sick of like trying to fight for education reform or for healthcare, a sane healthcare policy, because they know that they're going to always lose unless we fix this.
Well, the reason that I ask is that a lot of the things that you said in your presentation are very commendable, and I agree. Well, number one, I think the big problem to me is that most of the politicians are liars. They just don't tell the truth to their constituents, and they don't tell the truth in Congress. But I'd like to know how you reconcile the need, and I think there is a need, for business, true business, not big mega corporations that try to buy votes, but business to get their word out to politicians along with the people, because businesses have a vested interest in the elections that take place just as much as people do. And I know you talked about repealing whatever that decision was, that Citizens United,
Which we won't do, it won't work.
I just have an issue with that in the global sense, but I think there's a carve out there that needs to be made. I don't think all of the corporate donations are bad. I think the ones that cause the corruption you're talking about are bad, but how do you reconcile getting rid of Citizens United and still giving business and business people a voice?
Well, I should be clear. I'm not advocating the reversal of Citizens United.
I thought you were.
No, no. That would require a constitutional amendment, which will never happen. I think I hate to simplify it, but I think the provisions in the American Anti-Corruption Act that I laid out for you, I think those would do it. I think that would create reasonable limits such that you're basically talking about small businesses.
Right.
The small businesses would be able to play at a level that would actually have them heard, and they could advocate in other ways too, like getting their community behind their position, and it won't just be about the biggest donors as it is today. I mean, I know that's a simplified answer, but it happens to be true.
Okay, well, I hadn't heard of this amendment before.
The act. This is legislation. It only takes
Legislation.
51% or, well, 60% of the Senate and 50% of the House.
Yeah.
So anybody else before we wrap? I think we might have done it. It might be dinner time. Was there anybody else? Oh, okay, we'll do one last one.
In terms of like high-level strategy of your activity, it sounds like the winners would be, the losers would be the unknown people who donate big bucks, and the winners would be more grassroots movements. I guess I'm trying to sort of handle on who's really,
The winner.
the level of funding will go up or down under this activity, and then
Well, I mean, the goal that we have, and Dan, you should come up here for 1 second, because I want to talk about the rest of Florida in 2015 and 16. But the goal here is so that if you're a Tea Party candidate, for example, and you've got a decent base of support, you could run for office and you could actually get enough money so that you could run, right, getting these tax credits. And that money will be kind of curtailed in the most egregious ways, such that you're not just going to get completely blown out of the water by candidate Joe, who's taken huge money from agribusiness, unions, and banks, and just you have currently no chance of even, like, look how often this is happening right now, where you get a politician who actually has a lot of grassroots support but never even has a shot.
That's another question.
Yeah.
So in effect, the money that goes into the fund campaign contributions is successful. The tax credits are now correct?
Repeat
Yeah,
the
it's-
question. Repeat the question. I can't hear him.
Yeah. Can you just ask a little louder?
Could you stand up and speak loudly, please, so we can all hear you?
All right, so what I asked the gentleman is that who really ends up with the funds for political campaigns if this proposal goes through? And I think what I heard you say is that in effect, for all practical purposes, at least large-scale private money would not be in the system, and you'd have public money in the form of tax credits that would be financing campaigns. Is that correct?
Yeah, so but,
I mean,
yeah.
here's my question.
Yeah.
So does that then mean that there's some governmental body that's drawing criteria in terms of who gets the money and what's to prevent that from happening?
No, and that's the way that public funding has been attempted in the past, but that's not what we advocate. It's not what's in Tallahassee. All it is, it's a simple $25 tax credit. There's no fund, there's no commission. All it does is, and you use the same back end that's used in the lotto system. Like literally, when you buy a lotto ticket, like a Powerball ticket, there's a coding process on the back end that prevents, like, you know, any doofus from forging a ticket and going in and being like, hey, I won $10 million. So you could.
I don't want to take up standing between the crowd and the thing that's unclear to me in your otherwise excellent presentation is who controls the money to the candidates in the future? More importantly, is there some governmental body that's
No, so I'm trying to explain. Yeah, I get your question. I'm getting there. So you use a reliable system so that, let's say, what's your name? Mike. So Mike's running. Everybody here is in his district, wants him to get elected. Everybody can, if it's city, it's 25. If it's state, it's 50. If it's federal, it's $100. Everybody, let's say you're running for state rep. Everybody in this room can give you $50. Rather than the last $50 that they would otherwise be spending on taxes, towards their state tax bill. Instead, they direct it to you. They provide the IRS with a code which says, I gave $50 to Mike, here's the code. The IRS then uses that technology to double check it on the back end using the same code from you, the candidate, and you would get that money from them. In Tallahassee, it's going to cost less than $250,000 per election cycle. That's about $125,000 a year. And this is what I always tell people. Yes, that's some money. But if you're stressing out about it and thinking, oh, that's not good, it's public money, that's kind of like maybe going to a fair and worrying about the fact that some dude just pulled a $20 bill out of your pocket while some heister actually just wired all of the money out of your bank account and you no longer have any money to your name. Like, we have to invest in order to have a Congress and a political system that has integrity, or it won't work. It's kind of like eating our broccoli. My analogies are like 50-50. All right, one last one.
If we're going to limit the amount of free speech someone can have, are we also going to limit what newspapers and other news organizations can contribute print-wise and TV air-wise?
Yeah.
No, because we're just talking about money. We're not talking at all about speech. We're just talking about money. So
that's an equalizer to the big papers and news organizations and such might be, they're always recommending or endorsing candidates.
yeah, but I think their power. I mean, we stay away from that. We don't. I mean, all we're talking about is getting people enough money to be able to run for office and be able to.
Big money soaked up on TV.
I'm not saying that this $25 is the limit that I can
No,
donate
it's
tonight.
not. It's only
a guarantee.
Yeah, it's $25 that you don't have to pay towards your taxes, so it's effectively free money for you to give to, but you can keep giving to other candidates, private, or out of your, you can give to a super PAC $1 million too. Nothing's up. Okay, you guys, we're gonna stop. The reason I'd asked Dan to come up was we want to do other anti-corruption laws in other cities in Florida. So I don't know the best way to facilitate that, but if y'all are interested in talking to Dan or Catherine at some point after today, you should, because there is an appetite for this. There is, we're going to win in Tallahassee, and it's going to be really cool and inspiring, and there's going to be more efforts to do the same. So you should be thinking about that. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.